What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here, and Hughes provided us an early list of expected cut candidates or players that won't return in 2025 for one reason or another. And I think looking at this list, many of us could have made an educated guess for why each and every one of these people would be on the list. Really, and we'll dive into the full one, the only shock factor here for me is right tackle Morgan Moses, because I really just kind of felt like it was etched in stone. We'd find a way to retain him and keep for once. I don't remember the last time we had the same starting five unit hitting the field together in consecutive seasons, right? But pushing that aside, let's take a look at the list here. We have cornerback DJ Reed, linebacker CJ Mosley, linebacker Jamien Sherwood, wide receiver Devontae Adams, wide receiver Allen Lazard, right tackle Morgan Moses, and tight end Tyler Conklin. When I kind of deeped the list and it finally hit me, we may have a bigger rebuild on our hands here, depending on how many of these people we can retain, regardless of how well the defense performs, just because there's not, even though we're installing a new scheme and it may be drastically different enough from what we were running under Aaron Rodgers, there's not going to be a cohesiveness and even a chemistry with some of the same players that are going to be hitting the field. And maybe that's a great thing. Maybe that's not so much of a good thing. I'll leave it up to you guys. But take a look at this list and let's just understand the impact of what we're losing here. DJ Reed was effectively cornerback 1A or 1B, however you want to look at it, but he played like a cornerback 1 only because of Sauce Gardner is CB2. Also worth mentioning that he is expected to be the star cornerback that's going to hit the free agent market this year. So I thought there was an outside chance with his, I think he tweeted out a lock emoji when Aaron Glenn was officially hired as head coach for the New York Jets and it was announced. I thought maybe that was a positive sign and we could have some semblance of trying to keep him, but he's most likely going, and he's most likely going for a big contract, like $60 million or something crazy. So you're losing one of the best cornerback, one of the pairings from the best cornerback duo in the NFL. And behind him, you're replacing him with guys that are going to have a much lower floor, but maybe potentially a higher ceiling, but it's going to be hard to find somebody to really replace the production that he offered. You're talking about jumping all the way down to somebody like JBC or Jarek Bernard-Converse or potentially Quantez Stiggers to replace him, and we'll have to see how that plans out, right? With that said, linebacker CJ Mosley, you're losing your top linebacker, arguably maybe your second with the developmental leaps that we saw from Jamien Sherwood, but then you're also potentially losing him. He may want to follow Ulbrich to the Falcons. Maybe Robert Saleh finds a way to make a play for him. Either way, CJ Mosley could retire, or we could outright cut him and finally move on from that albatross of a contract. And either way, I think both of these guys will end up with one of those two DCs, Saleh or Ulbrich. So it's pretty much a done deal. Jamien Sherwood would be the obvious option I would like to keep. But again, with the change of scheme, you're talking about linebackers that really require an additional 20, 25 pounds more than what you see Jamien Sherwood tipping the scales at. If there was going to be one candidate over the other, maybe CJ Mosley for that reason. But again, aging over the hill, contracts crazy is probably something where you just want to try to clean up the cap as quick as possible and shift some of these guys out. Wide receiver Devontae Adams, I think we all expected that the moment we got the official word that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to return. But much like DJ Reed, potentially an outside shot that, depending on what you do at quarterback, maybe he decides he's willing to stay and try to see what happens. If it doesn't work out early in the season, maybe he tries to request a trade, but that cap number is crazy. I think it's something like $38 million, although it's unguaranteed. So aside from having to rework the contract, he feels like he's gone, and it looks like the Chargers may be able to hone in on being able to scoop him up as well. Nobody in New York is going to miss Allen Lazard. I would be comfortable saying that. One of the bigger busts that we've seen since the likes of the Trumaine Johnsons and such of the world that got a overvalued contract for their services with very little to back that up in the way of production, right? And for Allen Lazard, he'll be remembered for the Butterfingers, ridiculous amount of drops that he's contributed, and then ultimately not even living up to expectations of just simply filling in as a wide receiver 2 after working his way up a depth chart under Aaron Rodgers. And granted, he was working with Zach Wilson, but still, you'd expect, when you have Tyler Conklin, for example, that can ball out and put up top 10 numbers at his position, you would expect Allen Lazard to be able to put up at least a respectable performance. Right tackle Morgan Moses, as mentioned, this is really the true surprise, and it really just comes from the fact that I was hoping we can keep the same 5. It felt like a lot of the conversations that were being held from a fan perspective was that he would be, re-signed, locked and loaded to really help us out here, and we wouldn't necessarily have to reach or spend an early pick on tackle, and hopefully we can delay that to round 2. But plans may change, right? This maybe creates a little bit more of an incentive for us to trade back a couple spots and really take a look at a guy like a Josh Simmons or whatever favorite tackle you feel like may be able to slide in there and produce earlier. In Josh Simmons' case, once he comes back from rehab, you're talking about potentially getting a huge gem there for what I would consider the best tackle in this class prior to the injury for what we saw. And then Tyler Conklin, tight end 1, really our only receiving threat. Jeremy Ruckert hasn't cracked 200 receiving yards at any point in his career yet, from what I recall. And then behind him, pick your poison. Kenny Yeboah, who I think has taken some nice steps, but there's a reason he's been relegated to tight end 3 duties for so long. And then you're preying on Zach Kuntz to finally turn a corner of some sorts. And there's some hope there. Steve Hyden, as former tight end coach, the new one that we brought in as well. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there's hope there for him to maybe develop into something that can produce on the active roster for us. But still, it's not a good look. And ideally, I would actually make the case that if you decide you don't want to go the route of keeping Tyler Conklin around, maybe he prices himself out, maybe you just want to go in a different direction, I'm very in favor of looking at somebody that has strong blocking capabilities and even just an average receiver. Again, I think you can have some anomaly years. You can have guys that everything just kind of clicks for them in terms of guys like Garrett Wilson pulling, extra defenders away from them, and maybe a propensity for the quarterback that tends to like tight ends more, and all manner of things that could work out in their favor. But I think the emphasis on the talent we acquire needs to be on everybody. Anybody coming in needs to have the ability to help out in the run game in some capacity. Wide receivers that know how to block and can continuously block downfield or help out in, things like the zone run scheme, whatever elements of that gets installed. You want a tight end that can not only block in line, attached to the offensive line, you want them to be able to separate and, pick apart some guys in space as well. And obviously that goes ditto for the offensive line. Looks like we're bringing fullback back as well. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. I wouldn't mind potentially being able to get some savings there by going heavy on a more of a blocking style guy. But let me know what you guys ultimately think, because this is a significant amount of talent, no matter how much you love or hate them, that has produced some of the better seasons that we've seen so far. So a tough blow for the Jets nonetheless. I will say that hopefully that means it heightens our opportunity to go and get not just one, but a couple of hopefully high-level compensatory picks in 2026, assuming we're not going out and, dropping a ridiculous contract in free agency. So let me know what you guys think about this list. Is there anybody that you feel like we absolutely should try to do everything we can to retain, or is everybody pretty much open season for you? I'll catch you guys again. Peace.